Alright, so we're going to try and rotomold this, which we'll show you what that means, but we went to the Home Depot and we're looking around like we're encouraging you guys to do, and we stumbled across this plastic that has this really wild texture to it. Alright? And we kind of, in acknowledging that when you cast things in plaster, it picks up every little detail. You can see that picked up the text from that bowl it was cast on the outside of. We're kind of hoping that we'll be able to pick up this texture when we cast plaster into it. So we made this kind of crude mold, all right, with this plastic, with that texture inside. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put plaster in there, and as that plaster's setting, I'm gonna kind of like randomly rotate this, making sure that I never rotate it to the open ends down. And what it should do is coat the inside of this thing with a relatively even wall thickness, and then we'll be left with like a hollow vessel. I'm a little concerned as it starts to cure, are we gonna get like a run on the inside? But we're not too worried about the inside. We're just kind of trying to make it hollow. To do it, we're gonna use plaster, but we're also gonna try and achieve a marbling effect. So this is kind of two experiments in one. So I'm gonna mix mostly white, all right, and then I'm gonna take some of this paint and I'm gonna squirt a bunch of it into the water of the stuff that I'm gonna mix. So I'm gonna mix some plaster that's green, some that's white. And the way I'm going to make it green is by tinting this water. So I'm gonna mix this up. This is going to be white plaster. I'm going to mix this up. This is going to be this green plaster. And after those are mixed, I'm going to pour the green into the white and give it like one really crude mix to make it have kind of like a marble vein to it. Then we're going to pour that collectively into there. So, like we talked about earlier, you want to mix most of the plaster in one shot. If you kind of mix it all, if you mix it like in pieces, it's gonna set off way faster than you expect, and you're gonna end up like, rather than having like a cream cheese kind of thing, rather than being smooth, it's gonna be like it's gonna tear almost. You'll see it stirs in pretty well. Plaster's pretty good at soaking water up, so with very little stirring, we'll get something that's pretty smooth. And this paint is, I don't really know what it is. I bought it at IKEA in the kids section probably a year ago. We're thinking you can use kind of any water-based paint. Whoa, that is a much different consistency. Let's get a little bit of water to put in there. Bear in mind, the paint is changing the chemistry of this, so it seems like both our ratios being a little bit off and adding some kind of alternative material. Let's make sure that's runny enough to flow. I'm gonna add a little bit more water. Adding too much water just kind of change the is actually going to change the makeup of the plaster, and it can actually be detrimental. So you don't want to add so much that it's really flowy, but that should be good enough. All right, I'm going to pour that in there. And we're going to give that like 1 or 2 loose stirs in hopes that we're kind of creating a vein. All right, and then we're going to pour it in our mold. Okay, and with any luck, I'm going to rotate it around. And we're going to coat the walls of that thing. Oh. And if you watch kind of like commercial scale rotomolding, they have this weird machine that kind of rotates things totally randomly with the intent that the walls come out totally even thickness. We're obviously not going to have that, but I just want to make sure we don't have any walls that are so thin that they basically just crumble. So if you decide to rotomold, don't forget about the bottom. No, the marbling may not really work. I might just be like stirring it kind of right now and getting rid of anything that was marbled, but that's why it's an experiment. And who knows what the outside looks like now. If you do this also and it seems way too little, plaster doesn't really like bond to itself chemically, but you could do it again and it'll stick to it. So before you demold it, you could just do this same thing over and try and get the wall to be a little thicker. It seems it's going to take a while, but it is starting to thicken up a little bit. See, the front edge of that kind of puddle is starting to kind of maintain a few little wrinkles. So it is starting to set. You can see it's starting to set just by the way the drops look on the table, how they've got a little bit of memory to them, it looks like. It's starting to really slow down as it runs around there. Oh, weird. Did you see that? It like just suddenly went off. Look, there's like no puddle anymore. So it seems like even after it's done kind of really flowing, you probably want to keep moving it a little bit, just until it starts to like look chalky. My concern would be, you see how it looked like it had stopped, and there is now this stuff at the bottom, right? So don't neglect the bottom of the thing, but make sure, but I feel like if you just, once it looked like it stopped, you set it down, I think what would end up happening is you would have paper thin walls and kind of really heavy at the bottom. I'm thinking what I'll probably do too is after this starts really dries, I'll probably do this again, because once this is dry, it's going to be so kind of like accepting of more plaster, and it's going to be so porous that we can maybe make the wall much thicker. I'm thinking one thing right now is it's running down the walls so much because it's plastic and it's just slippery. Oh god, look at that, it just pulled away from the bottom entirely there. The instructions say use cold water. We're assuming that's so you have a longer open time, but you can imagine in some of these situations a longer open time can be annoying. So using warm water, you don't want to use hot water. I think that would set it off right away, but using a slightly warmer water might make it so that it doesn't take so long to set. It does seem like we're gonna have a way thicker bottom, so that's, yeah, I think I'm gonna do this twice. And like I said, it's gonna, once this is dry, it's gonna stick to this dried plaster way better than it stuck to this plastic. Alrighty, so I'm gonna mix up some plaster of Paris, and we're gonna kind of drape it over this bowl or this plate. As you can see, it's starting to get there, so I'm gonna spread it. And so I'm gonna take this little tongue depressor thing, and keep in mind this is just what I'm looking for. You can do whatever you feel like. But I'm going to spread this along this outside of this plate, and it's hopefully going to match up with another thing I've already made that we'll show you during class. And I just generally guessed on the volume that I mixed. If you mix way too much, it can be a little annoying to handle, but we recommend buying a lot of measuring cups, or kind of whatever cup you plan on stirring this stuff in. Because you can imagine if I had a ton of this left over, I wouldn't want to clean it out. It just kind of becomes a nuisance. This is a little enough that I'll clean this out. Do not flush this stuff down your sink. Because even, no matter how much water you mix in this, it's eventually going to set. So what I'm going to do is rinse it out just in a bucket of water, and tomorrow that bucket of water will have in the bottom of it a bunch of set plaster that I can then throw in the trash.